have to get a name like Ophir, you have to have an Israeli connection.
I know, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny because my dad's like Josh, and my sister's Iris, and my mom's Ruth, and then I just got like Ophir.
Yeah. Well, it could have been Shlomo.
It could have been Shlomo.
Just be
That's
very
true.
thankful.
That's true.
Say, Dad,
Could have been
thank you.
Shmulik.
Yeah, Shmulik. I know.
You know, Craig is the dialect whisperer. We'll get in a cab, and he'll be like, keep talking. I'm going to guess where you're from. And they're always like, no chance. So last night we were in a cab, and this guy's talking. Craig starts giving him some dialect. I don't know what. That wasn't dialect, but I guess
I can guess.
Global
I can guess
dialect. You can do like regions of India?
Yeah.
Yeah, regions of
Whoa.
India. I'm like Southern India, Goa. You know where you at? Yeah.
It was
It's
great.
like a weird talent.
And
that
he nailed it
freestyle
for the guy
rapping.
last night. He was like, you're from the west part of Haiti. And he was like, yeah. That was like
That's
amazing.
insane.
Yeah, small talent.
Craig,
Are we recording?
Yeah, we are.
Okay, cool.
But that was a cool intro.
Not really.
I liked
So anyway, we're here with our friend Ophir from Pearl AI. And for those of you
Not from, the founder.
Okay, well, whatever. Don't correct me. So the if you've been living under a rock for the last couple of years, this thing called AI. It's not Allen Iverson, although, you know, for old guys like me it could be, but it's artificial intelligence, and now we're using it well in dentistry. So, Ophir, give us the story. How did Pearl AI start? What's your mission, and what drove you to create this company?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me,
Yeah,
Peter
bud.
and Craig.
Yeah.
So I've been in really applied computer vision for the past 16 or 17 years, so basically my entire career. I have a background in engineering. I got exposed to computer vision at Carnegie Mellon, which is where I got my master's and bachelor's degrees, and have effectively spent a career of taking this powerful technology and applying it to industry. And my previous company was a company called Gum Gum. Grew that to well over $1 billion in
not
value.
dental.
But
Not
not dental, funnily
ironically.
enough. It would have been a good name for a dental company. But the idea there was that we were processing a lot of the known internet and effectively selling this data for targeting purposes. So it was a media company. And it grew to be pretty large, and we incubated a few other computer vision-driven applications within this enterprise. Now, I'd been running this for 10, 11 years at this point. AI over that period of time had become much more powerful. So come 2010, 11, 12, it's really when you start to see neural networks take off in their modern form. So the technology got exponentially
That
better.
long ago? I keep thinking like this is a new phenomenon. Like,
Well, that's when you started seeing the shift, and
Yeah.
things have been improving consistently since then. But really, the underpinning models go back to the 50s and 60s. So neural networks
Wow.
were invented a long time ago, but only with the hardware catching up were you able to actually see it come to fruition in a way that's performant and also cost-effective. So I have had a long-standing interest in building a healthcare-oriented enterprise that would have a fundamental impact on the world that was positive. For as much as I love my previous company, and I did, I also felt that it wasn't the highest use of the technology. So I became very interested in this effort, started incubating this project, decided on dental very explicitly, did look at a few different forms of medicine. My father's a retired dentist, but...
Where did he practice, Ophir?
So he's retired now, but he was practicing in Los Angeles.
Okay. And I'm just curious.
My mom ran the practice,
Yeah,
so
me too.
traditional kind of situation.
Same story.
Yeah.
Anybody follow in the father's footsteps and become a dentist?
No, which is funny because
It's usually hereditary,
dentistry
yeah.
usually comes in clusters.
Yeah.
I was always very interested in entrepreneurship and technology. My sister also didn't end up there. But we have other people in the sort of family that are dentists as well. Anyway, dentistry is wildly well suited for the infusion of technology. So this capability is an inevitability in all of medical radiology, for sure. Everyone agrees on that. It's just too effective to not use as a diagnostic tool. The thing with dentistry is that you have far more radiographs captured annually than any other form of medicine. So there's just like a lot of quantity there.
Yeah,
of
no one's
data.
taking routine
The clinical-
14 to 25 or 28 x-rays per year or whatever.
Exactly.
Or 4 to 4.
It's the only form of
4
medicine
yeah.
where you're always getting
Right. There's no other
revenue
one.
taken consistently. And in addition to that, the clinical need is through the roof. So something like 49% of caries go undiagnosed. Thank you. Something like 42% of periapical lesions go undiagnosed. Like 22% of the caries identified are not actually carious lesions. The numbers are ridiculous. So there was a study back in 1997. That was a really interesting one. It was a Reader's Digest article. Did you guys see this article?
I think, yeah. So, yes, keep going with it, but because I can't.
So a journalist went to 50 states.
That's right.
And got 50 diagnoses from 50 dentists in each state. His treatment costs came in somewhere between $300 and, $0, I think, and $30,000. The recommendation. We ran our own study, an independent study, large scale, 136 practitioners, asked them to diagnose and treatment plan an FMX set.
The same FMX.
The same FMX.
Yeah, okay.
136 practitioners. This is a study available on our website. And we saw treatment costs between $300 and $36,000. Very similar kind of results. And there was very, very low concurrence. There were certain teeth in the study that had basically a coin flip as related to the detection of things like recurrent decay or caries detection, stuff like that.
Diagnosis only from the radiographs, or is there pictures and
only from the radiographs?
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
So you're not checking things clinically.
Wow.
So pretty crazy results, and it just speaks to the benefit of a technology like this. If you think about it just very rationally, it's really hard to identify incipient decay. It's really easy to miss periodical lesions, not even be looking for them. Calculus, early bone loss. What we want to do as a dentist, I'm not a dentist, but what you want to do in medicine is identify things early so you can treat them preventatively. And quality care begins with accurate diagnosis, right? So if you're already missing the mark at the very start of the process, you can't possibly deliver good care.
Amen.
It's the foundational step. So
now
everything
AI
gets worse
comes
from
into the picture. We surface 37% more disease on average per radiograph encounter. This is like per the clinical trials with the FDA. We have an impact on case presentation and treatment acceptance that's over 30% on average.
And just for the listener, because I had the benefit of actually seeing it.
Yeah.
So, obviously we as dentists love to show radiographs to our patients, to which patients always say, what are those, my toes? Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And there's been a lot of modalities. I don't want to name any names because they're still viable, but they've always showed, like, in quantitative measures, how to detect someone's cavity.
Yeah.
Whether it's laser diagnosis, whatever the hell it is. It's just been a way as an adjunct to help the dentist communicate the level and severity of decay. So go through what you're talking about and why treatment acceptance is highlighted. What's the animation process?
So we offer a range of different tools and capabilities, but the thing we're best known for and the most fundamental capability that we're all referring to, we call second opinion.
Right.
And that manifests visually is, like you said, you show a patient a radiograph today, everyone knows what an x-ray looks like. It's a bunch of sort of gray, white, and, smudges and other items. So what we do is very simple. We take that black and white or grayscale image and we colorize it. So we'll identify disease. We'll identify cavities, for example, and we'll highlight them in bright pink. You can roll over that bright pink area. You could see how much has encroached into different elements of the oral anatomy.
Yeah, I saw that superimposition tool where you superimpose the enamel dent and you see
and
the
that comes on top of it.
Sick.
So we're already identifying, we're measuring bone levels, we're identifying caries, all these different diseases. And then on top of that, you're able to also segment out the oral anatomy. So you could see, the enamel and the pulp and all the elements of the tooth. So suddenly now, if you're a patient, you're like, okay, this is my tooth. I can see that I have decay. It's encroached this much percentage into each element of my tooth. It's this close to the pulp, right? If it touches that, I'm going to have to get a root canal. Suddenly you can have a functional conversation with the patient where they fully understand it. And that's profoundly different. That's never occurred before because typically you have a doctor pointing to a very confusing grayscale thing. That means nothing to the patient.
And
they're recommending this is $3,000 of treatment. And
patients want to know. Show me what you see.
I trust you, doc.
Yeah, well, they say, like, hey, I just went to my dentist in New York, and they didn't see this here a year ago, and then you're kind of stuck. You're like, well, let me pull up the X-ray for you, and depending on the quality of your monitor or where you're around the room, and they're kind of doing that isometric sit-up, trying to see the monitor with you. It's like this is a definitive way, and patients always have this halo effect. Like there's been studies that when a patient is scanned intraorally, all forms of acceptance of treatment go up. So if you use whatever scanner you use, if you scan a patient and go over the scan, all forms of treatment percentages and acceptance go up.
Perception of high tech.
It's a perception of high tech. There's a halo effect on it. And imagine if they go to an office where there's a Pearl AI and they have this tool and they're being told what they need, and they go to another dentist and just showing them, where's your AI diagnostic?
Yeah.
Like where's the animation to show me what's going on? It might be an expectation for a patient to know.
It's inherently confusing. There's already a trust problem in dentistry and
Massive.
in medicine in general in America, because in America a lot of these are for-profit enterprises, right? If you look at that back to that article I talked about, the Reader's Digest one, like the last paragraph, the journalist went to the head of the ADA and he's like, "What do I do as a patient to try and drive better trust in what the doctor is telling me?" And the ADA person said, "Well, we recommend you go and get second and third opinions, and like that way you can kind of take charge of your own oral health." And the last line of the article is like, "I went to 50 doctors, I got 50 opinions, and I don't feel comforted."
And none of them the same,
And
right?
none of them are the same. That's
just-
the problem.
I
He
think-
actually feels less comfort because seeing.
I think I'd like to
variability.
point out something that's just unfair for the dental profession is that, when you go to the medical doctor, and I'll just use my own example here. I was going to a very basic family practitioner, and he's always, every time I go there, he's like, "You're doing great. You're totally healthy. Everything looks great."
Yeah.
And then someone encouraged me to go to the Cleveland Clinic and do an executive physical, and Peter's like a biohacker, and he's always really ahead of his health. And I was told, like, "Hey, your A1C is getting close to being pre-diabetic. You may want to consider it." So in like medicine, it's like, "You're fine, you're fine, you're fine. You have diabetes."
Yeah.
They could have prognosticated. They could have said, "Hey, you're 32. You're 5.1 on your A1C. You're 34. You're 5.3. At this rate,
You're
when
trending.
you're 50,
Yeah.
you could be pre-diabetic." And
Yeah.
I want to speak to that.
Yeah.
Because I think what's happening, and the reason why there's such disparate diagnoses amongst different dentists, is we all have a threshold for the future. Some people are just preventing you from getting out of trouble. Like, don't worry, we'll watch that.
Watch
Yeah.
that.
When it hurts, call me. Well,
Right.
shit, when it hurts, I need a freaking root canal.
Right.
Don't tell me that. Like, I don't want to be told I have diabetes. I want to be preventative.
Yeah.
So in dentistry, we have a beautiful profession that we help people become optimally well and not
Yeah.
just unsick acutely.
Right.
So speak to how AI can prognosticate and or compare.
So massively.
Yeah,
So
I
like,
don't know this
just
feature.
back to the caries for people that listen to the podcast. The caries is a cavity, right?
Oh
The
no,
cavity,
we have
right?
dentists.
Okay,
No,
it's all
you'll
dentists.
be if you listen to this, you'll
Yeah.
be the first non-dentist to ever listen to it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget. So like we'll actually color the caries detection differently if it's enamel only or encroached further. And patients really like that too, because you're able to show them this light pink detection. You can say, like, "Look, this is early decay. We can treat this totally preventatively. Here's the course of sort of routine care to engage in, and hopefully we can just never have to do any sort of drilling
Yeah.
on this tooth." If you think about the dentist's day-to-day reality, they're extremely burdened, right? It's just like you're running a business, and you never learned how to do that, right?
Right.
Thank God my dad had my mom, like to help him
Thank
get
God,
out of the office.
thank God they
'cause-
have Bulletproof, because
it-
that's what we focus on.
Yeah.
We
Is-
focus on
is the-
helping dentists.
I mean, that
you
part
know.
of it is so. My dad is
Massive.
an amazing dentist.
My dad too.
Not equipped to run a business
Right.
component of it, right? So
Right.
thank God he had that set up. And then you're looking at dozens of radiographs a day, and you have other things in your mind. There's just like a lot to do, and these things are just inherently hard to see, right? So it's hard to be generating totally consistent care across all patients. Does this solve that entirely? Of course not. But it is a massively helpful tool in unburdening the practitioner and enabling them to more comprehensively review radiography, which is a very simple proposition, but a very powerful one
Well,
when just used with every patient.
let me double click on what I was trying to get clarity from you from before. Do you have, and again, I'm not as familiar, I just signed up for Pearl AI in full disclosure just now,
Yeah.
although pretty you've had it in your practice for quite a while. Does it have the capability to compare the trend of X-rays? So, in other words, a small area, and then and then show the next, and have some sort of comparison feature between two different X-rays.
You could do side-by-side comparisons. So you
Okay.
can show this is where you were at 2 years
Trend
ago, here's
over
where you're
time.
at today.
Okay, got it.
Now we have actually built capabilities that are able to use more generative models to show how that will progress into the future.
Sure.
But we are an FDA-cleared medical device. There
Got
are
it.
very stringent rules around what we do. And the things that we do need to be cleared by the FDA, right?
So you can't just say for animation
We
purposes
can't just do the
only, you show like this
animation
homeless
because-
person
and
with
that's
no
also
teeth.
not only that,
This
but-
is you in 7 years.
Not
This
only
guy
that,
meth
but
mouth.
a detection versus an animation that is sort of trying to determine what's going to occur in the future is actually a higher level of clearance. So there are there's more hoops to jump through to provide
course.
certain capabilities to the market.
Okay, I just want to go back one second, because it was a pretty interesting personal story for me to hear more about. So you had this massive success. I think you said $1 billion. What was the number that you grew the first company, Gum Gum?
Yeah, a company worth well over $1 billion.
Okay, and how old were you at that point when you had that valuation or exit?
Well, I mean, I started the company. I was probably just turning 24. Just turning 25, maybe. I was probably late
And then
24s.
when you exited?
So we didn't actually exit technically. So it was supposed to go public around March of last year, but then the markets all crashed, like
Yeah, of course.
right in time, of
Yeah.
course. Now there have been exit-ish like events along the way with that company, as there are when you have a valuable company and people are able to sort of engage in secondary transactions and stuff like that. But I'm still the largest common shareholder of that company.
Is it still positive revenue? And
Very profitable,
Okay, got it,
growing
cool.
really rapidly, hundreds of millions of revenue. Yeah.
Good for you. So what's your role with them right now?
So my role now, I've stepped off the board.
Okay.
I'm still very much in touch with the company and helpful. I'm the largest common shareholder, like I mentioned, so I have that kind of relationship. I put, it's my management team from before that I put in place.
Okay.
And I'm very close to the board and all that, but I have no day-to-day responsibility with that company anymore.
So what percentage of your day-to-day life is dedicated towards Pearl at this particular moment?
150.
Okay, good. You're sleeping on the floor of the
Yeah, it's
factory.
all Pearl all day. It kind of reminds me, I think we've exited this now, but the early days of Pearl reminded me of the early days of Gum Gum.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't as young and I was older and I'd done pretty well. So it was a different kind of reality to have to go into slog. But there's no way to build a company like this without the slog. I mean, it is a difficult endeavor. And it feels good to, exit out of that period and just get into growth mode because, it's painful.
So I want to just ask one question here. I was just thinking, what data do you show as far as treatment acceptance from the patients? Do you have any data points to show that once the person adopts Pearl and is using it, what percentage?
So we've done a bunch of case studies around this. We typically will show 30+% increase in case.
30+% increase. That's wild.
Yeah.
And I understand. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's two ways to adopt Pearl. There's one which is you have just basically the software, and then you have what's the model you told me before,
So we have what we call standalone and
Standalone.
what we call native.
Okay, so it's like basically $300 or $600 a month, roughly. Is that what it is?
So if you just want the chairside diagnostic support, second opinion, that's $299 a month.
Okay.
And if you want the capability where we actually correlate the data in the practice management system with the data from the imaging system, which is really powerful tool set for all the stakeholders in a practice, enhanced AI-driven morning huddles, entire patient population level review, AI-driven call sheets, on and on.
Things like
And
there's $300,000 worth of undiagnosed restorative
exactly
treatment in here.
what it is. The first thing you see when you log in is a series of funnels,
Right.
and it says, here's an endo funnel, here's a restorative funnel, here's an impaction funnel, and it just says, here's all the undiagnosed opportunity in your patient population. So we see what's been planned, what's been treated, and what's undiagnosed. So we'll surface millions of dollars on day one, typically in just undiagnosed.
Because it's looking at the whole database over time, right?
Because we know it's in the PMS, so we know it's been identified, we know it's been treated, and we know what we've also found, so we're able to correlate all that. Very powerful.
And the problem is those cavities are turning into crowns, those crowns are turning into root canals, and those root canals are turning into implants. So it's not $1 million worth of dentistry, it's millions of dollars worth of damage that's getting worse over time. And doctors really need to see that.
And what you find with practices that engage in specialty care, for example, this is a phenomenally effective approach of just filling schedules, making sure that the perio chair or the endo chair is always filled. If you have them coming in one day a week, or if you're referring out to a specialist, it's very effective for that use case.
Hey everybody, registration is now open for our 7th annual summit. Is that right, Peter? Our 7th?
7th.
That's crazy. So this time at the beautiful JW Marriott Camelback in Scottsdale, Arizona. You can immerse yourself in innovation, inspiration, unite your team, which is most important, and at the same time, earn 16 CE credits. Renew your practice, transform your life, June 14th and 15th. Registration's now open. Don't delay. These things always sell out. This one will as well. Go to bulletproofsummit.com. 2 days that will redefine your practice life. We guarantee it.
What about tooth wear? Something I'm really passionate about. So what I find is a massive hole globally in the dentist diagnostic capability to understand tooth wear. So I'm a big aligner guy, KOL for a couple different aligner companies, and what I find is that the occlusion conversation's not happening as frequently as it should because dentists are focused on the acute forms of disease, cavities and perio. So they see a 22-year-old girl, she has no cavities, no perio, good, Diane, look great, see you in a year. But what we don't notice is because of the position of the teeth that she's wearing, and we don't catch it until it's statistically, visually visible. You know what I mean?
Look, man, I'm a grinder. familiar. I'm familiar. I have like
right. But the
yeah.
typical thing in that diabetic analogy, it's like, Ophir, you're fine. See you in a year. And then, Ophir, you're 40. Let's do full mouth reconstruction on you.
Right.
So and there's great scanning tools. The intraoral scanners that we all use can show the dimensions of teeth, but dentists are not having the level of conversations that they should.
Yeah.
Because of the timeline. They feel like, oh, what are you trying to do? Recommend me like Invisalign or whatever? And no, it's actually, if you don't correct this, you're going to need major dentistry.
I mean, the reason this is an exciting space from a technical perspective is because there's so many opportunities to apply AI to positive effect. So what have we done to date? And what is really phase one of the organization? We've gotten FDA clearances. We've gotten the ability to identify disease and other conditions and oral anatomy comprehensively on 2D. We've gotten regulatory clearance in 120 countries, and now we're deploying this technology into the world. But for every range of specialty, for CT,
what about scanner?
for ortho, there's just like an endless amount of opportunity
Well,
to
but where
improve.
specifically is massive. Because I think your AI
Yeah,
tools
and
could
the-
see that teeth are pyramid shaped, so as you wear them down.
I mean,
they
our
get-
priority list is 5 years long, but is also constantly being rejiggered. So
But is where part of your priority
where
list?
has been discussed and it's on the list somewhere.
Jeez,
I don't think it's high
for
priority,
me,
but that's
it's such
interesting.
high priority.
Yeah.
High
It's a good
priority because
conversation
people
for our
are
clinical
coming
team.
about it. Dentists are coming about the orthodontic conversation to totally.
What's the best way to identify where would you do it with the intraoral scanner, radiographically?
It would definitely have to be intraoral scanner.
Okay.
I would think
Or,
because
or just full mouth series of pictures, like actually like SLR
well,
style
X-rays
pictures.
could compare,
No,
but
not X-rays.
because well, let me just kind of rewind 1 second. So the problem is that dentists are very comfortable with the immediate forms of disease, like the medical thing I just said, and what doctors are doing, because I'm on a lot of advisory boards to help people do more clear aligners or introduce orthodontics into their practices. So the typical question is, "Hey, Ophir, I'm your dentist. Do your crowded teeth bother you?" "No, I like them. They're fine."
Yeah.
It's not this, "Hey, did you realize that you're 26 years old,
Yeah.
you're central incisor, you've only owned that in your mouth for 12 or 15 years, and you've lost 15 to 30%.
Right.
So just as a tool, like going back to the diabetes thing, by the time you're 45 or 48, if you keep up the patterns that you have, you're gonna lose at least 40% of your tooth structure.
Wow.
And that's the
I'm
reality.
surprised the
And when I-
intraoral scanner company, are they involved in sort of looking into this like iTero?
No,
okay.
not at the moment. So
Why is that, you think?
iTero is wonderful because that's what's called a weather map. So you scan the patient and then you click on a button and it shows like a severe weather map, like red for severe and grinding forces. But what you have to do is mechanically turn the teeth towards the patient and say, see how thick your teeth are getting down here? See the dimension of them? Because teeth are pyramid shaped, so as you wear them, they get thicker buccolingually. And patients always, I've been a dentist for 24 years, and it's always, why did my dentist never tell me this?
Yeah.
And the dentist's like, well, I don't want to tell him
It's
about
a hard
it.
conversation.
Because it's the timeline conversation. So if I went to my doctor and he's like, hey, dude, you better be careful with your blood sugar. Like, you'd go to 5 of their 10 other doctors and be like, no, you don't have a problem with your blood sugar. You're 5.2 on your A1C. They don't realize that there's a prognostication of that.
I think you make a great point. I mean, I feel like I'm exactly in this boat.
You are.
For all my health. Meaning, like, I go to all the doctors, and they're just like, great. And I know one day I'm going to go in and be like, you're fucked.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, they
So
are going to say that. They are going to say that you're fucked.
I need to
And
go
by the
take
way,
it into my own
that's-
hands. I got to
but
go
that's
to
what
these
happened to me.
clinics and do the deeper reviews.
I went to a cardiologist
know.
before I ran my first marathon. He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? My patients are all sick. I'm like, no, but I'm about to run a marathon.
But don't you think it's a systemic issue with medicine?
It is,
and how
but
it's
this is the
approached,
reason
right?
for the Reader's Digest disparity.
Yeah.
There was good dentists in there that said,
Right.
hey, Ophir, I'm looking at you right now. You have some wear.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm a dentist. You're probably judging my clothes because you're from LA. I don't know. Does that draw any well, whatever. But I'm just saying you have some wear.
Yeah.
It's not bad, but I can see there's a, left alone without some form of repositioning of your teeth or some sort of night guard, you're going to wind up in trouble. And if you go to a dentist, they'll say, hey, Ophir, you're doing great. No cavities, no root canals. You look great. See you later. They're not giving you the opportunity to learn about the next level of wellness or optimal health.
Totally.
So that for me, I think that would be a
You're right, because
no-brainer.
if you could bring straightforward technology to bear to assist in that effort, then it's going to be very helpful. But it also is a systemic issue. Like, both need to meet somewhere.
Right, but the scanner
technology could be the
correlation.
unlock.
Imagine the scanners, like you have 5.
Yeah.
iTero does a wonderful job at giving you before and afters. It'll click back and forth, and you can show a patient, like, hey, here you are in 2018, here you are today. And they can instantly know, shit, that was 6 years. I'm 29. I better do something because you can see it.
I would agree
but
with you that it's
imagine
desperately needed. you are a great communicator in that you've been able to say to the patient, hey, this is going to be a problem later down the road. Most dentists will look for
The easy.
how did I get? Yeah. Hey, Miss Jones, broken. I can fix it. Right. It's the at bat. Can I hit this ball?
Right.
But
They also don't want to they don't want to overwhelm. So like with our tool set, we often see
they don't want to be
patients will
rejected.
turn off.
They don't want to be rejected.
They also don't want to scare the patient.
Well, they don't want to have what Peter and I call the sweaty back conversation. Be like, hey, Mrs. Jones, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Because they're scared of confrontation.
Right.
That's why the AI, the diagnose, the AI, whatever the mechanism you're using, some are real and some are not. But it's like, hey, you have an empirical score of 98. We better do your cavity.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, once they do that, they're like, and by the way, the whole quadrant that has an old silver filling there, we should fix that. So it's like dentists need this.
Yeah. I mean, there's something. I'm a huge believer. I think you are too, in just like visualization and visual aids, because a picture speaks 1,000 words, and like that is just very true. And when it comes to something like medicine, where everything is already overwhelming and confusing, you're able to just show simple pictures, whether you're showing where or you're identifying some disease, and you're just able to like point it out and turn it into a narrative. Like it should be a story. Be like, here's what's happening. Here's what we're gonna do to address it. Here's what you could do to prevent similar things in the future. That is like the way that our brains are constructed to take in information comfortably.
Of course. I always say if patients could understand what we know, they would make the right decisions for them.
Right.
It's a failure of communication for us. We choose to be dentists because we're not.
Dentists have a lot to do.
But we have limited time.
I'm sorry, what has
you don't have
Dentists have to do a lot well. It's hard. It's hard.
I know.
It's a hard job. Yeah.
So I have a question. We do a group panel. There's 2 other guys who do a podcast with us, and I asked this question at them, like what are the constituents of where a dentist is valued? Diagnostician or artist, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I revert back to when I was growing. How old are you?
41.
All right. So you probably remember when I was wanting to go somewhere, and my parents, I said, hey, I want to go to the mall or somewhere I hadn't been. We broke out an atlas, and we looked at, all right, it's A6, and you followed this around, and that was the map to get to there. Then GPS came, and all of a sudden now we follow this. People will follow GPS off a cliff if it tells them to go there, kind of thing, right? We just become brain dead. You put it in, and you follow the computer. My fear is, not fear, but do you possibly see that same kind of analog happening where almost the repetition of the dentist diagnosing for their own acumen gets
confirmation
displaced?
bias. You're saying bias,
or just like you become reliant. The skill of diagnosis becomes relegated.
Well, don't we become reliant on everything? Aren't you reliant on
it's
the
a
iPhone?
I think it's a legitimate question, but here's what I would say. I would say that like we work with a lot of dental schools, and I speak with the deans of these schools, and they all say the same thing. Like we know we're not sending our students into the field proficient at identifying, caries, for example. And the expectation is that somehow they're going to learn in the field and get better. The problem is there's no consistency of feedback. You don't have a mentor.
Right.
You're not necessarily getting better. It might take you 20 years to get better, and look how much damage has been done in that period of time. So
100%.
One thing that I would say about our tool set is you just graduated college. You go and you work at, wherever, and you're an associate practitioner, and you have training wheels, and you're actually getting feedback. So I think there's an argument to be made. I don't know, because we haven't said it either way, right, to be fair. But there's an argument to be made that, like, this is actually showing me and helping me to become a better
I see. More of a mentor, a digital mentor, so to speak.
So like a digital mentor.
Yeah, okay.
But the alternative is also really bad. It's just like, if you go into a DSO environment, what is the problem? The problem is standard of care, and it's impossible to, like, you get to 3 practices, let alone 500. It's impossible to manage this situation. You're performing chart audits. You're going to do 10 charts out of some subset of practice. That's not giving you a real audit. We're looking at 100% of
my
charts.
concern matters not. Here's the deal. My concern matters not because, like, the toothpaste is not getting put back in the jar. Like, AI is out. It's here to stay. It's coming. It's only going to advance more and more and more. And so, like, I'm not.
But I do want to
playing
be really
a counterbalance
clear.
to it.
It's an assistive device. It's designated as an assistive device. It is called second opinion, not first opinion. It is intended to point out areas of interest so that practitioners can check things clinically or otherwise make an executive decision.
Will you promise me you won't start a robotic company that then
there'll be no
displaces
robots. I think that's not a risk.
Well, honestly, I think that would be the best possible thing is like some sort of clamped on tooth-borne device that would like mill your tooth, like being braced by the count, like almost like guides, guided surgery is rigid. I mean, listen, you can sneeze and move all around. I mean, that would be better for everybody.
Like a LASIK surgery kind of thing.
Yeah. The point I'm trying to make is not about us. It's about the patient.
I know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, maybe in 100, like we're
by the way,
very advanced with
the pilots
software
felt this
AI.
way too. They're like when it was fly-by-wire, the
Yeah.
Airbus, like, what are you talking about? Like they had to build in
What's
like
this
feedback,
autopilot?
like hydraulic feedback.
Right.
Even if it's brake-by-wire, there's built-in hydrostatic pressure into the pedal because
We're not nearly advanced with like.
But humans are the worst part of this whole process, by the way. Like, were you there for this morning? Like they were talking about the F1 drivers. The car is like this most amazing machine.
Yeah.
And even the best drivers, the F1 drivers, are still the weakest link. They're terrible drivers.
No, Max Verstappen is not terrible.
No, but they are all the weakest link. They're just like, why can't we just omit the driver? We have to worry about G-forces.
I bet you there will be some kind of robot. That is an area where robotics will make sense because that is it. If you have a track and you're doing the same thing and it just comes down to the quality of the vehicle, you could do that there. If you're talking about robotic integration into things like surgery, where there has been some like development there, it's just like it's such a hard, regulatorily heavy reality, and we're just like, why don't we have humanoid robots? Why are we nowhere
look at
near
aviation?
Yeah.
Aviation, if it wasn't for the pilot lobby, I mean, I think it's I know you're not the pilot, so I'm
Teslas
hitting
in
below.
the sky.
Yeah, I think we can all argue. I mean, there was something about like I'm getting way over my skis here, but I think I've heard research that the pilot is the poorest interface of the aviation industry, from what I understand.
Well,
I mean, part of it's psychological too, is that you like feels better to know a human is there.
They actually
as well.
recommend, I can tell you, my dad was a pilot for 40 years, and they said, we recommend that you put on autopilot 800 feet in the air and take it off 800 feet before landing.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. We'd rather the computer do everything else. So you're kind of spot on.
Yeah, so I just think that, I know you're nostalgic for the profession of dentistry, but these tools are, they're helping us. I mean, like the electric handpiece is a great tool, but it's assisted in making us more efficient.
I was speaking recently with the head of radiology from Johns Hopkins, or he's a great guy, Dr. Elliot Fishman, and he studies this stuff really closely and produces a lot of content around it as well. And, what he basically says is like AI will not replace radiologists, but AI will replace radiologists that don't use AI.
That's a great way of looking at it.
It's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Like, it's really
Same
not a
thing
threat,
for guided
but,
surgery,
like,
by the way.
You're not going to be competitive if you're not utilizing this tool set.
Guided surgery will not replace the talented surgeon, but it will replace the surgeon who doesn't want to use guides. That's beautiful. I'm going to steal that from you.
Steal it from Elliot.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Okay, well, I don't know him, so it's
okay. Steal it from
fine.
me.
Okay,
so we promised a
pithy
30-minute pithy, and
but there's so much. I
know.
I really like him.
Yeah.
Do you
hey
have
guys,
to go?
I'll be back. I'll come back.
Wait,
Anytime.
hold. So I just want to ask one question because I love to see when someone is tapped into the future, and you've probably forgotten more about anything we've talked about than we even know, right? What are you most excited about in dentistry? Like, where do you see the profession? And this is kind of a global question, but like, if we're to have this conversation in 5 years, does it look much different? Does it not look much different?
The reason this is such a compelling business for me is I told you I went from like running this large company that did not provide a lot of utility to humans at the end of the day, right? Like, now what I believe we're going to be accomplished, I know I'm bringing this back to Pearl, but this is part of the answer. Part of what I think AI will do, I'll say, as a function of the industry, and what Pearl definitely will do directly, is positively impact billions of lives in the near term.
Okay.
Right? And we're going to elevate the standard of care. So if you look at the history of modern dentistry, what changes the game? You have the toothbrush, and then you have the drill, and then you have amalgams, and then you have digital dentistry, and then you have fluoride, and then you have the intraoral scanner.
Anesthesia was a big one.
When does everything change and the level of care gets elevated in a way that nobody's ever going to turn back? It's whenever you have the infusion or the introduction of a new technology. So what is AI? AI is a new, it's a moment where we have this like nascent technology that is pretty much already arrived and is rapidly getting infused into the industry, and in many ways is going to have this kind of fundamentally impactful impact on all of dentistry, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. We're on a continuum of just like technology playing a role in elevating the standard of care. What's interesting about AI in particular, though, is it's not a single function thing. it's touching so many parts of the category
Totally.
that it's going to lift things up.
I
Really
mean, we're seeing it
dramatically.
even just the patient management software. We're seeing it in phone conversation. Like, so it's like, I know it's a different version of AI. You have more like synthetic vision kind of thing
We
going
do
on.
computer vision.
Computer vision,
And there's
yes.
a whole other world of just, like NLP,
Yes.
right? Natural language processing-based AI and generative AI. I mean,
Right.
all these things have roles to play.
Yes. Yes. So I know that's a hard question to answer. Like, hey, what do you, rub your magic ball and tell me where it's going to be in 5 years. It's just fascinating to see the advancements. They're not slow moving. I talk about this like, and maybe I misquote it, but like the half-life. I always say like the corpus of data that you have, right? There's a half-life in computers. And for example, that volume of information is doubled every X number of years.
What's that law called again?
Moore's Law?
Moore's Law, yeah.
Yeah.
Or is it
doubling the number of transistors on an integrated circuit every
and so it's just, you obviously live and eat and breathe this stuff.
Here's what I'll say. Maybe as a final note, I think it's kind of interesting. It's like right now what we do it's super sexy, right? Like in dentistry, right? So it's very visual and it's exciting and a lot of people are talking about it, but it's like we're not at the moment of maximum impact yet. The reason that when this becomes sexy in my mind is when it's just the plumbing and nobody thinks about it and it's just a total standard of care. That's when it has maximum impact.
What's the penetration?
It's just like the Apple Vision Pro. Yeah. It's like super sexy, but zero impact on anything.
Yeah.
In 10 years, when everybody's sitting at home with this thing on their face, and it changes the nature of work and interaction and everything, and then you've impacted the planet in some way, positive or negatively. So I'm excited for the very unsexy future of this just being part of the plumbing, utility, electricity and water, AI. Standard of care, right?
It will be. Based on 25 years of clinical practice and knowing the time pressure and the differences. I mean, it's an absolute, it's not an if, it's a when.
But it's also not a $100,000 piece of hardware.
Right.
It's super cheap.
Right.
It has an ROI associated with it, not because it's designed to, but because there's an epidemic of underdiagnosis.
Well, with a 30% higher increased treatment acceptance and
servicing so much more.
And $300 a month. It's like you can do the math pretty damn quick. You have to diagnose 2 crowns a year.
We saw
you could integrate it in a day. Like, there's just not a lot of barrier
I have one question. I know you got to run, but I'm just curious. Do you have some function of like doctor tracker to, because we all integrate associates, or many of our audience integrates associates, and we have to spend a lot of time like looking at their quality of care and their post-op x-rays and stuff like that. Can you assign this AI
with our practice intelligence toolset, you're able to look at everything by practitioner, by operatory, and kind of slice and dice the data however you want.
That's great.
Well, I mean, post-op x-rays on fillings, you could see how well they're adapted.
Right. Yep.
I mean, imagine that. Look at the savings of time. You know how many doctors I've talked to? I brought this associate and they were wonderful.
The audit of care.
Now I'm noticing I haven't audited their care because I've been busy, and now I have to redo 2 years of work.
Right.
Holy shit.
That's awesome. Good
That's
question.
Amazing.
Good question.
Well,
thank you for
super busy, and we
man.
appreciate you doing what you're doing for dentistry, and I hope your dad's proud of you because it's pretty freaking awesome.
We all want to make our dads proud.
Yeah, we all do. We all want to make our dads proud.
Dad's like, what are you doing again with that
it's
coloring
really
book?
funny that
does he understand what you're doing?
He loves it. I mean, it's so funny even to me that I ended up in dentistry in the end.
You did.
It's
tried to get out.
It's like some kind of inertia that pulls you back in, right?
No, it's a genetic abnormality.
Okay.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like Tay-Sachs, but like it just comes back around. You can't get out of it.
Tay-Sachs. I haven't heard that since dental school.
Well, we got two Hebrews here, so I figured I'll bring it back to something relevant.
Oh my God! All right, everybody, we'll see y'all next time.
Are you a Hebrew?